In the blazing heat of the Egyptian desert, the Valley of the Kings lay silent, a graveyard of forgotten rulers. By 1922, archaeologists had spent decades digging through these sands, unearthing tomb after tomb. Yet one king remained a ghost in history. His name was Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh. Barely mentioned in ancient records, his existence seemed like little more than a whisper from the past. Scholars believed his tomb, if it had ever existed, was long lost to time. But then, a discovery changed history forever. Picture this, a team of weary workers, their hands blistered from years of failed excavations, stumble upon a hidden step beneath the sand. It looked like nothing, just a block of stone covered in dust. But as they dug deeper, each step revealed another, leading downward into darkness. The air shifted, heavy with the scent of untouched centuries. What lay at the bottom was not just a staircase. It was a portal into the greatest archaeological mystery of all time. Howard Carter, the man leading the search, had endured ridicule. For 6 long years he dug, funded by the wealthy Lord Carnarvon. Most archaeologists believed he was chasing a dream, wasting money on a boy king whose story had vanished from history. Yet, on that fateful November day, when the workers uncovered the sealed doorway, Carter knew they had stumbled upon something monumental. The inscription bore the cartouche of Tutankhamun, the boy ruler thought to have died in obscurity. This was no ordinary tomb. This was a time capsule of Egypt's golden age. Imagine standing there with Carter, lantern in hand, peering through a tiny breach in the sealed doorway. As his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he later recalled the moment vividly. Everywhere, the glint of gold. The chamber sparkled as though frozen in time, filled with treasures untouched for over 3,000 years. But Carter refused to rush. He understood what was at stake. The world's gaze was upon him, and one wrong move could destroy the fragile relics within. For the Egyptians of Tutankhamun's time, the tomb was more than a burial site. It was a vessel for eternal life. Every artifact, from golden thrones to carved statues, carried a sacred purpose. To disturb it was to trespass into the divine. Yet Carter pressed on, knowing he was about to rewrite history. But what secrets truly lay inside, and more importantly, what dangers awaited those who dared to enter? Because, as legend would soon spread, Tutankhamun's tomb was not merely a resting place. It was a trap of superstition, fear, and perhaps even a curse. When Lord Carnarvon, the very man who financed the excavation, died mysteriously just months after the tomb was opened, the newspapers erupted with tales of the curse of the pharaohs. Were these simply coincidences, or had ancient Egyptians truly designed their tombs to protect against the living? The answer would haunt explorers for years. But before the world obsessed over curses, there was wonder. Inside the antechamber, treasures lay piled like a scene from myth. Gilded couches shaped like wild beasts, ivory chariots, delicate alabaster vessels still sealed with oils, and weapons that had never seen battle. This was no meager burial of a forgotten king. This was a treasure hoard fit for eternity. Yet Carter realized something was strange. Despite the glittering wealth, the tomb seemed cramped, almost hastily prepared. Why would a pharaoh's resting place feel so incomplete? What secrets were hidden beyond the first chamber? As the workers cleared the debris, one door remained sealed. Behind it, Carter suspected, lay the burial chamber itself, the final resting place of the boy king. The tension was unbearable. Each swing of the pickaxe brought them closer to revealing what no human eyes had seen in 3 millennia. And when the moment came, when the sealed door was finally opened, the world would learn not only about Tutankhamun's treasures, but about the mysteries of his short, tragic life. What Carter found in that chamber would shock the world, ignite legends of curses, and unravel a deeper question. Why was Tutankhamun buried in secrecy? That answer begins with the coffin of gold and the body it concealed. But when Carter's team cleared away the rubble, they realized the tomb's entrance was no ordinary find. It was a sealed gateway to secrets hidden for over 3,000 years. When Howard Carter and his team finally broke through the second sealed doorway, the air that escaped was stale, trapped for more than 3,000 years. The flicker of their lanterns revealed walls painted with vibrant scenes, processions of gods guiding the young pharaoh into the afterlife. The colors glowed as if they had been painted yesterday, as if time itself had been frozen. For a moment, silence fell over the chamber. They weren't just archaeologists now, they were trespassers in a sacred realm. And in the center of that room lay the prize they had long imagined, a massive shrine, covered in gold, towering nearly to the ceiling. But the real mystery was what rested within. The shrine was like a golden fortress, protecting something too precious to expose. To reach the heart of the tomb, Carter would have to dismantle layer upon layer, each box nested inside another like a series of divine puzzles. As the team began this careful work, tension grew. Would Tutankhamun's body truly lie here untouched, or had ancient robbers beaten them to it centuries before? Each panel removed revealed yet another, until at last they reached a carved sarcophagus of glowing quartzite, its surface adorned with protective spells and sacred symbols. This was no ordinary burial chest. It was designed to guard a king's soul against eternity itself. When they finally lifted the lid, the truth lay before them. Inside the quartzite sarcophagus were not one but 3 nested coffins. The outer 2 were beautifully decorated with gilded wood, symbols of power, and inlaid semi-precious stones. But it was the 3rd coffin that stunned the world. Made of solid gold, weighing hundreds of pounds, it was crafted with such brilliance that even under the flickering lantern light it gleamed like the sun. Carved upon it was the serene face of the boy king himself, eyes closed in eternal rest, lips set in a faint, enigmatic smile. Tutankhamun was no longer a forgotten shadow of history. In this moment, he became immortal. Yet, as Carter gazed upon the golden coffin, he felt the weight of unanswered questions. Why had a boy who ruled for less than a decade been given such wealth? What secrets about Egypt's royal family were buried with him? And more disturbingly, how had his life ended so suddenly? These were mysteries the golden mask could not answer, but the body within might. And opening the coffin was a risk that carried both danger and awe. Every movement had to be deliberate, the world was watching, and then something strange happened. When the coffin was carefully opened, Carter found the body of Tutankhamun tightly bound in resin-soaked linens. But the resin had hardened into a dark, rock-like crust, almost fusing the body to the coffin itself. The heat of ancient oils had, over centuries, effectively burned parts of the young king's remains. This was not the pristine mummy of a pharaoh that Carter expected. Instead, it raised an unsettling question. Had Tutankhamun's burial been rushed or even botched? Was this the work of priests making mistakes? Or was there something more sinister at play? The golden mask that covered the boy's face dazzled with its beauty. Inlaid with lapis lazuli, quartz, and colored glass, it was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, its gaze both lifelike and eternal. But behind its beauty, the mask carried another message. On its shoulders were etched protective spells from the Book of the Dead, meant to guide Tutankhamun safely through the afterlife. It was as if the Egyptians feared that this king, though young, carried a heavy burden into eternity. But why such fear for a boy who should have had decades ahead of him? As Carter and his team struggled to separate the body from the coffin, fragments of mystery began to unfold. The unusual damage to the body, the cramped tomb, smaller than any other royal burial, the hurried paintings on the walls. Something didn't add up. Tutankhamun may have been laid to rest with unimaginable treasure, but the circumstances surrounding his death whispered of secrets the ancient priests wanted hidden. Was this truly the tomb prepared for a pharaoh, Or was it a substitute, hastily arranged after an unexpected tragedy? The more Carter uncovered, the deeper the questions grew. Because behind Tutankhamun's golden coffin was not just a boy king. It was a story of political intrigue, sudden death, and perhaps even murder. And as the world marveled at the treasures, Carter knew that the real mystery lay within the fragile bones of the king himself. What really killed Tutankhamun? Disease, an accident, or something far darker? We leave viewers with the haunting question of Tutankhamun's mysterious death, setting up the next section to explore theories and evidence. Tutankhamun's golden coffin held more than treasure. It held questions that have haunted historians for nearly a century. When his body was first examined, the evidence was startling. This was no peaceful death. The boy king's remains told a story of pain, of fragility, and perhaps of betrayal. For a ruler who had only just begun to step into his role, the abrupt end of his life felt unnatural. And so began one of the greatest historical whodunits of all time. How did Tutankhamun really die? At first, scholars assumed illness. The boy pharaoh's body revealed signs of deformities, a clubfoot, frail bones, and an unusual gait. CT scans conducted thousands of years later showed damage to his leg, suggesting he may have struggled to walk without assistance. Could a simple infection from a broken leg have killed him? Ancient Egypt was not free from deadly diseases. Malaria, tuberculosis, and countless infections could strike without warning. Some argue that a combination of a weakened body and disease was enough to cut his reign tragically short. But others were not convinced. The evidence seemed incomplete. There were darker clues waiting to be uncovered. One of the most disturbing discoveries came when researchers found that parts of Tutankhamun's body appeared to have been charred. His chest cavity was missing, and chemical analysis revealed that ancient oils used in mummification may have ignited, burning his body after burial. Was this a ritual gone horribly wrong, or did priests deliberately destroy his remains to erase him from memory? The more scientists investigated, the stranger the mystery became. It seemed as though Tutankhamun's death, and even his burial, was tangled in secrets no one wanted revealed. Then came the skull fracture. Early X-rays showed a crack at the back of Tutankhamun's head, leading many to suspect foul play. Could the boy king have been struck down in a palace conspiracy? Theories spread like wildfire. Some believed his advisor and eventual successor, had orchestrated the murder to seize the throne. Others pointed to General Hormheb, a powerful military commander, who may have seen the frail young pharaoh as an obstacle. The idea of regicide, murder within the royal court, was tantalizing. But was it true? Modern scans later revealed that the skull damage may have occurred after death, possibly during Carter's rough handling of the body. Yet even if the head wound wasn't evidence of murder, suspicion lingered. Tutankhamun died young, around 18 or 19 years old, and the sudden nature of his death did not fit neatly with natural causes. Political motives swirled all around him. His death ended a dynasty, and the men who came after him had everything to gain. Was Tutankhamun simply too young and too fragile to survive, or was he deliberately removed? The mystery deepens when we look at his family. Tutankhamun was born during one of Egypt's most turbulent times, the Amarna period. His father, Akhenaten, had turned Egypt upside down by abandoning the old gods and worshipping only Aten, the sun disk. This radical shift angered priests and nobles alike. When Tutankhamun took the throne, restoring the old gods, he became both a symbol of hope and a pawn in a dangerous political game. His sudden death may have been more than a personal tragedy. It may have been the final act in a battle for Egypt's soul. And then there is the possibility of an accident. CT scans suggest Tutankhamun suffered a severe fracture to his leg shortly before death. Combined with evidence of malaria, this may have created a deadly cocktail. A simple fall from a chariot, a stumble during a hunt, or even a minor injury could have spiraled into a fatal infection. In a world without antibiotics, even kings were not safe. The image of the young ruler collapsing, helpless despite all his power and gold, carries its own haunting weight. But does this explanation feel too ordinary for a death shrouded in such mystery? Historians and scientists continue to argue. Was Tutankhamun a victim of disease, a tragic accident, or the target of assassination? Each new discovery adds pieces to the puzzle, but never the full picture. His tomb, filled with treasures, was supposed to secure his eternity. Instead, it left us with questions that refuse to fade. Perhaps that is Tutankhamun's true legacy. Not the gold, not the mask, but the enduring mystery of a life cut short and a death that refuses to be explained. And yet, one thing is certain: Tutankhamun's death changed Egypt forever. His passing ended a royal line, set new rulers in motion, and paved the way for Egypt's future. But his story does not end with death, for even in burial, the boy king's tomb contained secrets yet to be uncovered, secrets that would shake the modern world. Because hidden among the treasures of his tomb were objects that didn't quite belong, artifacts that hinted at stolen burials, secret plots, and mysteries that reached beyond Tutankhamun himself. When Howard Carter and his team began cataloging the thousands of objects inside Tutankhamun's tomb, the world marveled at the golden mask, the jewelry, the chariots, and the thrones. Yet hidden in plain sight were details that puzzled historians. Not every treasure seemed to belong to Tutankhamun. Some artifacts carried signs of hasty preparation, repurposing, or even recycling from other royal burials. Why would the burial of Egypt's boy king, the most intact tomb ever found, contain objects that weren't his? The answer may reveal one of the greatest secrets of the ancient world. The first mystery lay in the golden mask itself, the iconic face that has become a global symbol of ancient Egypt. Closer inspection revealed that the mask was altered. The ears had pierced holes, unusual for a male pharaoh, and experts discovered that the mask may have originally been made for a queen. Was this Tutankhamun's mask at all, or had it been crafted for someone else? Perhaps his stepmother, Nefertiti, and later repurposed. The idea that the most famous artifact in history may have been second-hand shocked the archaeological community. But it wasn't the only anomaly. The coffins that held Tutankhamun's mummy told a similar story. The innermost coffin, crafted from solid gold, fit perfectly, but the outer coffins bore inscriptions that had been clumsily altered. Names had been replaced, hieroglyphs were modified. It was as if someone had rushed to erase one identity and overwrite it with Tutankhamun's. Whose name had been there first was another pharaoh, or queen, supposed to rest in this chamber before Tutankhamun's sudden death forced a change in plans. Even the walls of the burial chamber whispered secrets. While 3 walls bore scenes consistent with royal funerary traditions, the 4th wall looked different, rushed, uneven, and poorly executed. Modern analysis suggests that this wall may conceal a hidden doorway. Some archaeologists, most notably Nicholas Reeves, proposed that Tutankhamun's tomb was originally part of a larger complex designed for someone far greater, Queen Nefertiti herself. If true, then Tutankhamun may have been buried in a side chamber of a tomb never meant for him. This theory electrified historians. Could Tutankhamun's resting place have been a mere annex to Egypt's most legendary queen? The treasures themselves also carried signs of reuse. Furniture, jewelry, and ritual objects bore styles from earlier reigns. Some items carried the names of other rulers, hastily scratched out and replaced with Tutankhamun's. It was as though officials scrambled to give the boy king a proper burial, raiding storerooms or even other tombs to fill his chamber with treasures worthy of a pharaoh. But why the rush? The answer may lie in the turbulent politics of the time. Tutankhamun's death came suddenly, and Egypt faced a crisis. The boy king had no surviving children, and his widow, Ankhesenamun, was left vulnerable. Within days, power shifted into the hands of I, the aging vizier, and General Horemheb. They needed to bury Tutankhamun quickly to solidify their rule. In their haste, they may have used whatever treasures were available, even if they weren't originally his. This also explains the unusually small size of his tomb. Compared to the grand monuments of other pharaohs, Tutankhamun's resting place was modest, almost cramped. Many believe it was never meant for a king at all, but was instead a noble's tomb, hastily adapted to house the young ruler. If true, then the greatest archaeological discovery of all time was born not from careful planning, but from desperate improvisation. But there is a darker interpretation. Some historians suggest that Tutankhamun was deliberately erased from history. After his death, his name was struck from king lists, his reign barely acknowledged. Could the use of recycled treasures and a cramped tomb reflect not just haste, but an attempt to diminish his legacy? If I or Horemheb had ambitions of their own, burying Tutankhamun quickly and quietly would serve their purposes. His treasures might have been meant as hand-me-downs, tokens to silence the dead king while Egypt moved on. And yet, despite the anomalies, Tutankhamun's tomb became immortal. Ironically, the very mistakes and mysteries, the second hand mask, the overwritten inscriptions, the cramped burial chamber, ensured that his tomb remained undisturbed for over 3,000 years. While the grand tombs of greater pharaohs were looted and stripped bare, Tutankhamun's remained sealed, waiting for Howard Carter to stumble upon it. In death, the forgotten boy king became eternal. Still, one question lingers like a shadow. If some of Tutankhamun's treasures were not truly his, then who were they meant for? Were they stolen from another pharaoh, or from a queen whose tomb remains hidden in the Valley of the Kings? The possibility that the answer lies just beyond the painted walls of Tutankhamun's chamber continues to drive archaeologists back to the sands of Egypt. But perhaps the greatest mystery of all isn't what was borrowed or altered, it's what was missing, because within the sealed tomb of Tutankhamun, certain things that should have been there were nowhere to be found. When Howard Carter opened Tutankhamun's tomb, the world expected to see unimaginable wealth, treasures that would showcase the full power of an Egyptian pharaoh. And yes, the golden mask, the shrines, and the jewelry stunned the world. But for every glittering artifact on display, there was something strangely absent, as though pieces of the story had been deliberately erased. The missing treasures of Tutankhamun are as intriguing as the objects that were found, and they raise a haunting question. Who tampered with the boy king's tomb before Carter ever laid eyes on it? The most obvious absence was his heart. When Carter's team unwrapped Tutankhamun's fragile mummy, they were shocked to discover that the pharaoh's chest cavity was empty. His sternum, ribs, and even his heart were gone. Ancient Egyptian burial traditions placed immense importance on preserving the heart. It was believed to be the center of the soul, judged by the gods in the afterlife. So why was Tutankhamun's heart missing? Was it destroyed in a botched mummification or deliberately removed to deny him eternal life? Theories range from accidental chemical burns caused by the embalming process to darker suggestions that his enemies mutilated his body to erase him spiritually. Other missing items only deepen the mystery. Unlike other royal burials, Tutankhamun's tomb lacked a proper military collection. Pharaohs were usually entombed with armies of miniature soldiers, weapons, and shields to symbolize their power in the afterlife. Yet Tutankhamun had almost none of these. Was this an oversight, or was it intentional? Perhaps reflecting his image as a weak and sickly ruler, one who was not meant to be remembered as a warrior pharaoh. Even more puzzling was the absence of a Book of the Dead. This sacred text, filled with spells and guidance for navigating the underworld, was standard in royal burials. Without it, the deceased would be left vulnerable in the afterlife, unable to defend themselves against the dangers of the Jewat, the Egyptian underworld. Why would Egypt's embalmers deny Tutankhamun such a crucial safeguard? Was there no time to prepare one, or was someone ensuring that Tutankhamun's journey in the afterlife would be fraught with danger? Archaeologists also noted the lack of certain lavish furniture pieces usually found in royal tombs. Many of the items appeared hastily made, unfinished, or recycled from other burials. Whole categories of luxury goods, fine cosmetics, perfumes, elaborate food offerings, were missing entirely. The impression left behind is not of a carefully prepared pharaoh's tomb, but of a rushed burial, where officials scrambled to fill the chambers with whatever they could find. But the most controversial absence may be the lack of inscriptions detailing Tutankhamun's life and reign. Pharaohs typically decorated their tombs with long inscriptions celebrating their achievements, linking their legacy to the gods. Tutankhamun's chamber walls are nearly bare in comparison. The silence of those walls suggests something deliberate. A ruler whose memory was meant to fade, whose reign was not celebrated, and whose name was nearly erased from history. Some scholars argue that these gaps are evidence of a cover-up. Tutankhamun died suddenly, perhaps in suspicious circumstances. His widow, Ankhesenamun, wrote desperately to the Hittites asking for a husband to help protect her throne, only for that foreign prince to be mysteriously murdered before reaching Egypt. Soon after, the old vizier, took the throne, followed by Horemheb. If Tutankhamun's death was inconvenient to those who seized power, then stripping his tomb of certain treasures may have been part of erasing his significance. By denying him a proper burial, they could weaken his legacy and strengthen their own claim to rule. Others point to looters. Evidence suggests that the tomb was broken into not once, but twice in ancient times. The intruders may have stolen portable treasures, oils, jewelry, or precious metals before the tomb was resealed. Yet strangely, many valuable items were left behind, including solid gold artifacts. This raises a disturbing possibility that the tomb wasn't looted for wealth, but rather selectively emptied to remove specific items, objects tied to secrets that others wanted hidden. Was the missing heart symbolic of Tutankhamun's erasure from the royal line? Was the absent Book of the Dead a way to condemn him in the afterlife? Was the stripped-down burial chamber the result of political rivals trying to silence his reign forever? The absences speak louder than the treasures themselves, transforming Tutankhamun's tomb into a crime scene that continues to puzzle historians. And yet, in a final twist of irony, it was precisely these flaws, the rushed burial, the anomalies, the missing treasures, that kept Tutankhamun's tomb hidden for over 3,000 years. His diminished resting place escaped the attention of ancient robbers and survived untouched until Carter's discovery in 1922. The boy king, who was meant to be forgotten instead, became the most famous pharaoh in history. But the mysteries don't end with missing treasures, because within Tutankhamun's own body, his bones, his DNA, and his injuries, lie shocking secrets that could reveal how the boy king really died. If the missing treasures raised eyebrows, the condition of Tutankhamun's body raised far darker suspicions. When Howard Carter's team unwrapped the fragile mummy in the 1920s, they expected to find the carefully preserved body of a young king, swaddled in the finest linens, resting peacefully for eternity. Instead, they found something unsettling, a body burned, broken, and incomplete. The strange state of Tutankhamun's remains has fueled nearly a century of debate. How did the boy king really die? At first glance, the body told a tale of violence. Carter's notes describe a shattered sternum, missing ribs, and charred flesh. Some suggested that this was not a peaceful death at all, but the aftermath of a terrible accident, or worse, murder. Early X-rays in the 1960s revealed a possible fracture at the base of the skull, leading some researchers to speculate that Tutankhamun was struck from behind, assassinated in a palace coup. The image of a young king betrayed and murdered by those closest to him captured the world's imagination. Was Tutankhamun the victim of a conspiracy designed to erase him and seize his throne? But modern science added new twists to the mystery. CT scans conducted in 2005 told a different story. They revealed a severe fracture in Tutankhamun's left leg, possibly caused by a chariot accident. The wound may have become infected, spreading rapidly and leading to his death at the age of just 19. Yet this explanation, while plausible, did not settle the matter. If it was simply an accident, why did his body show signs of being burned after burial? The answer may lie in the embalming process. Chemical analysis of his remains revealed traces of flammable oils and resins. It appears that the priests who embalmed Tutankhamun used the wrong mixture of substances, and when these compounds reacted with oxygen inside the sealed coffin, they literally set the body alight. Tutankhamun's mummy had spontaneously combusted in its coffin, giving it a charred appearance that puzzled Carter's team. Was this a tragic mistake, or was it intentional sabotage, a way of ensuring his body would never rest intact? Even stranger, DNA testing in 2010 revealed that Tutankhamun was plagued by multiple health problems. He suffered from a cleft palate, clubfoot, and malaria. His fragile health raises questions. Was he already doomed by genetic weakness, the result of inbreeding within the royal family? Some scholars believe his death was less about assassination or accident, and more about the slow collapse of his body under the weight of illness. If true, it would mean that Tutankhamun was not a mighty pharaoh brought down by treachery, but a sickly teenager whose frail body could not withstand the pressures of kingship. And yet, there are holes in this theory. The leg fracture seems too severe to be a natural break. It may have been inflicted by force, perhaps even after death. The missing sternum and ribs also don't match the standard embalming practices of the time. Could these injuries point to a darker reality? That Tutankhamun's death was covered up, his body mutilated to hide the truth? Some point the finger at the elderly vizier who became pharaoh shortly after Tutankhamun's death. Others suspect Horemheb, the military general who eventually seized the throne. Both men had much to gain from Tutankhamun's demise. A sudden accident would have cleared the path to power, while a rushed burial covered in anomalies ensured that awkward questions would fade with time. But here's the chilling paradox. The very damage done to Tutankhamun's body, whether accidental or deliberate, made him unforgettable. Without the charred mummy, without the broken bones and the suspicious gaps in his burial, archaeologists might never have uncovered the deeper mysteries that continue to haunt his story. Instead of being erased from history, Tutankhamun became the most studied pharaoh of them all. The truth remains elusive. Was Tutankhamun struck down by enemies, killed in a tragic accident, undone by disease, or cursed by flawed embalming? Each theory holds clues, but none are definitive. What is certain is that his body tells a story of pain, fragility, and mystery. The boy who ruled one of the most powerful empires on earth left this world not as a mighty warrior king, but as a fragile youth whose death remains an enigma even after 300 years. But beyond the body, beyond the missing treasures, lies another layer of mystery. The hidden messages in the walls, shrines, and artifacts themselves. Were the ancient Egyptians trying to send us warnings about Tutankhamun's reign, or were they concealing secrets they never wanted revealed? Tutankhamun's tomb is not just a chamber of gold. It is a chamber of whispers, where the walls and artifacts seem to tell a story half hidden, half revealed. At first glance, the decorations appear simple compared to other pharaonic tombs. The walls are painted with ritual scenes, showing Tutankhamun with the gods, making his journey into the afterlife. But look closer and the cracks begin to show. The paint is faded, uneven, even rushed in places. Entire sections lack the elaborate detail that was customary for royal burials. Why would the burial of Egypt's king, son of the gods, be treated with such haste? Was it simply the result of a sudden, unexpected death, or something more deliberate, an attempt to cover up deeper truths? Scholars studying the tomb's artwork noticed something strange. The style of some of the figures didn't match Tutankhamun's reign. The outlines and proportions resembled art from the time of Akhenaten, the heretic king, who had tried to replace Egypt's ancient gods with a single deity, Aten. Akhenaten's revolution had nearly torn Egypt apart, and after his death, the rulers who followed him, including Tutankhamun, worked to erase all traces of his radical ideas. And yet, in Tutankhamun's tomb, echoes of Akhenaten's style remain. Could this suggest that part of the tomb was originally intended for someone else? Perhaps even Akhenaten himself. Even more intriguing are the shrines within the burial chamber. Carter's team discovered 4 golden shrines nested like Russian dolls around Tutankhamun's sarcophagus. On their surfaces were inscriptions of protective spells, but some were oddly generic, lacking the personalization typical of a king's burial. It seemed as though they had been borrowed, perhaps taken from another royal burial and repurposed for Tutankhamun. If true, this would support the theory of a rushed, improvised funeral. But it also raises another question: whose shrines were they originally, and why were they recycled? One artifact in particular continues to baffle researchers: a small dagger placed at Tutankhamun's side. Unlike most objects in the tomb, this dagger was not made of earthly gold or bronze, but of iron. And when scientists analyzed it, they made a shocking discovery: the iron was meteoric, forged from a fallen star. Imagine the symbolism: a boy king buried with a blade made of material from the heavens. Was this a symbol of divine protection, or a message to remind future generations that Tutankhamun's reign was cosmic, his power drawn not just from the Nile, but from the stars themselves? Other items seem to whisper warnings. The famous golden mask, iconic today, is believed by some experts to have been originally crafted for a woman, perhaps Nefertiti. The proportions of the mask's face and the piercings in the ears suggest it was not made for Tutankhamun at all, but hastily altered after his death. If true, this revelation is staggering. The most famous artifact in Egyptian history might be a recycled treasure, intended for another ruler, repurposed to preserve appearances. But what does that say about Tutankhamun's place in history? Was he truly celebrated, or merely patched into a legacy that was never meant to be his? The layout of the tomb itself adds to the mystery. Some archaeologists believe that behind the painted walls may lie hidden chambers, sealed doorways leading to unexplored passages. Ground-penetrating radar has hinted at anomalies behind the walls, sparking speculation that another burial may rest there. Could it be Nefertiti, Tutankhamun's stepmother and possibly co-ruler? If such a chamber exists, it would rewrite everything we know about the 18th dynasty. For now, the walls remain unbroken, holding their secrets close, and then there is the silence of the inscriptions. In most royal tombs, the texts proclaim the pharaoh's victories, his divine right to rule, his eternal bond with the gods. Tutankhamun's walls are strangely quiet. No long hymns, no detailed lists of triumphs. It is as if the young king's story was never meant to be fully told, or worse, was deliberately muted. Perhaps those who buried him intended to bury his memory as well. Together, The walls, the shrines, and the artifacts paint a haunting picture. This was no ordinary burial. This was a patchwork tomb, pieced together with objects and symbols that raise as many questions as they answer. Was it an act of reverence, giving the boy king what little time allowed? Or was it an act of control, reshaping his legacy to serve the ambitions of others? One thing is certain: Tutankhamun's tomb was never just about preserving a body. It was about crafting a story that still speaks across the millennia, but one written in fragments, symbols, and half-truths. And the deeper we look, the more we realize that the most powerful messages may be the ones left unspoken. But even if the artifacts whisper of hidden truths, another force surrounds Tutankhamun's tomb, one that terrified Carter's team, captivated the newspapers, and still haunts popular imagination today: the so-called Curse of the Pharaohs. When Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon opened the sealed doorway into Tutankhamun's burial chamber in 1922, they had no idea they were unleashing not only the treasures of an ancient king, but also one of the most enduring legends of the 20th century, the so-called Curse of the Pharaohs. It began as a whisper among workers, a rumor born in the desert winds, but within weeks it had become a worldwide sensation that gripped imaginations from Cairo to New York. The idea of a curse was fueled almost instantly. Within months of entering the tomb, Lord Carnarvon, the wealthy aristocrat who financed the expedition, fell mysteriously ill. He had suffered a mosquito bite on his cheek, which became infected after a shaving cut. Soon after, he developed blood poisoning and died in Cairo. Newspapers seized on the eerie coincidence. The Times of London published dramatic headlines. The New York World proclaimed, "Death comes to those who disturb the rest of pharaohs." Suddenly, Tutankhamun's tomb was not just an archaeological discovery. It was a haunted chamber of doom. As the story spread, other deaths and misfortunes were linked, sometimes tenuously, to the tomb. An American financier who had visited the site died suddenly in New York. A member of Carter's team was poisoned by a rare illness. Even Carter's beloved pet canary was said to have been killed by a cobra, a serpent sacred to Egyptian kings, on the very day the tomb was first opened. Each incident added fuel to the fire, weaving a narrative of supernatural vengeance that newspapers couldn't resist. But was there really a curse, or was it all clever myth-making? Skeptics pointed out that Carter himself, the man who spent the most time inside the tomb, lived for another 16 years, dying of natural causes at the age of 64. Most of the excavation team survived for decades. Medical historians suggest more rational explanations for the scattered illnesses: toxic mold spores sealed inside the tomb for centuries, bacteria from decaying artifacts, or even psychological stress amplified by rumor. Still, logic rarely defeats legend. For the public, the curse felt real, and its chilling allure transformed Tutankhamun's discovery into something far larger than archaeology. It became a global mystery. The curse wasn't just about death. It was about fear of the unknown, of disturbing forces that humans cannot control. Western audiences, fascinated by Egypt's exoticism, found the tale irresistible. Hollywood movies, pulp novels, and stage plays soon capitalized on the idea of ancient curses and mummies rising from the grave. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb didn't just give us artifacts. It gave us a cultural phenomenon that still shapes how we imagine in ancient Egypt today. Every mummy film, every haunted tomb story, every Halloween costume of a bandaged pharaoh has its roots in that feverish year of 1923. And yet, beneath the drama, the question lingers: did the ancient Egyptians themselves believe in curses like this? In reality, the inscriptions found within Tutankhamun's tomb contained no such warnings. Unlike some earlier burials, there were no spells threatening doom on intruders, but Egyptians certainly believed in the sanctity of the tomb and the wrath of spirits if disturbed. Funerary texts often invoked divine protection against those who would harm the deceased. It is entirely possible that the legend of a curse was not invented from thin air, but drawn from a deep well of cultural memory and fear. The irony is that the curse may have been more dangerous to the living than any spirit of the dead. While the story made Carter and his team famous, it also brought immense pressure, public scrutiny, and sensationalist reporting that twisted their work into spectacle. Carter grew frustrated, insisting that science, not superstition, should define Tutankhamun's legacy, but the legend had already slipped beyond his control. What makes the curse so enduring even today is its perfect blend of history and horror. It reminds us that the line between archaeology and storytelling is thin. Humans are not just seekers of knowledge. We are seekers of drama, of meaning, of warning. Tutankhamun's curse provided all of these in one haunting package. And yet, perhaps there is another kind of truth hidden in the legend. If the curse frightened the world into respecting the tomb, if it kept looters and treasure hunters at bay, then maybe, just maybe, the boy king got what he wanted after all. Eternal rest, guarded not by soldiers or walls, but by a story too terrifying to ignore. But if Tutankhamun's tomb has given us riches, mysteries, and curses, one final question remains. What does the boy king's legacy truly mean for us today? His reign was short, his impact debated, yet his tomb reshaped history. In our final chapter, we confront the enduring legacy of Tutankhamun. Nearly a century after Howard Carter first peered into the dimly lit chamber of Tutankhamun's tomb and whispered the famous words, "Yes, wonderful things," the boy king continues to cast his spell on the world. But perhaps the most remarkable part of the story is not what was found in the Valley of the Kings. It is what those discoveries mean for us today. For in many ways, Tutankhamun never truly died. His legacy has lived on, reshaping archaeology, rewriting history, and captivating the modern imagination in ways no pharaoh before him ever could. Tutankhamun was not a great conqueror like Ramses the Great. He was not a visionary builder like Sneferu or Khufu. His reign was short, his policies largely guided by advisors, and his death at just 18 left behind little more than questions. By the standards of ancient Egyptian history, he was a minor figure. And yet, in death, he achieved something greater than all of them, immortality through discovery. His tomb, untouched for over 0 years, became the most complete royal burial ever found, a time capsule that revealed ancient Egypt in stunning, intimate detail. The treasures themselves are breathtaking, jewelry crafted with microscopic precision, thrones adorned with gold leaf, weapons meant for both ceremony and battle, and of course the iconic golden funerary mask that has become a universal symbol of ancient Egypt. But beyond the glitter, what Tutankhamun's tomb gave us was knowledge. For the first time, archaeologists could study a pharaoh's burial exactly as it had been left, without the interference of grave robbers or centuries of plundering. It was as if history had been frozen in amber, waiting for the world to rediscover it. And yet, the story of Tutankhamun is not just about archaeology. It is about humanity's fascination with mystery. Every artifact seemed to whisper secrets. Who was Tutankhamun really? Why did he die so young? Was his lineage cursed by the upheaval of Akhenaten's reign, or by palace intrigue that ended with murder? These unanswered questions turned the boy king into a riddle, a puzzle that generations of historians, scientists, and storytellers have tried to solve. And that ongoing mystery keeps audiences around the world coming back, again and again. But perhaps Tutankhamun's greatest legacy lies in what his discovery did for archaeology itself. Before 1922, Egyptology was often seen as the pursuit of treasure hunters and adventurers. The spectacular finds inside the tomb changed that forever. Suddenly, archaeology wasn't just about digging up gold. It was about understanding civilizations, piecing together lives, and preserving history. Museums around the globe embraced this new wave of Egyptomania. When Tutankhamun's treasures toured the United States in the 1970s, millions lined up for hours just to glimpse the mask, the jewelry, the tiny sandals of the boy king. It became the most visited museum exhibition in history. In the modern era, Tutankhamun has also become a cultural icon. His image appears on posters, movies, television shows, even video games. He is the face of ancient Egypt for the world, a symbol of mystery, opulence, and wonder. And yet, there is irony in this. A boy who lived in the shadow of greater pharaohs now outshines them all, remembered not for what he did in life, but for what his tomb revealed in death. The enduring fascination with Tutankhamun also reminds us of something deeper, our own yearning for immortality. Ancient Egyptians believed in the afterlife, in the Ka and Ba, the spiritual essences that lived on after death. They built tombs, wrote spells, and performed rituals to ensure that death was not an end but a continuation. And in a way, Tutankhamun achieved exactly what his people desired. Though his name might have been forgotten by history, though his dynasty collapsed, and though his body lay in darkness for millennia, he has lived again in the minds of billions. The boy king has achieved eternal life, not through magic, but through memory. As we close this journey into the tomb, one final thought lingers. Perhaps the real treasure of Tutankhamun is not the gold or the jewels, not the statues or the chariots, but the reminder that history itself is fragile, waiting in silence until uncovered. His tomb is not just a chamber of the dead. It is a message across time, a voice from 3-0 years ago whispering, "Do not forget us." And that, more than anything else, is Tutankhamun's true legacy. The boy king, who lived only 18 short years, has, in death, become eternal. And as long as we continue to wonder, to search, to ask questions, Tutankhamun's story will never end.